G'day, Danny. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Yeah, very good, very good. Just coming into spring here in Australia, and I know you're pretty excited about coming into autumn or
Oh,
fall
yes.
there.
Yeah.
What are you doing to prep?
Lots of sleep because I'm not going to have much of it. Yeah, lots of early mornings and late nights, and it'll be lots of stars too. So just
Nice,
catching up on that sleep.
nice. Looking forward to seeing the results, actually.
Yeah, me too.
I'm really interested in why people become photographers and why they get into landscape photography in particular. And I guess I'd like to start with that. What made you a photographer?
All the hard questions first. We always did road trips when I was younger, and so we would see a lot of things on those road trips, and it
Mhm.
was mostly all across Canada. We did originally, I'm originally from Ontario,
Okay.
and we would do road trips around Ontario and then around the East Coast, and absolutely stunning. And I'd always just be taking pictures as we're driving
Sure.
and all the places that we'd go to and see. And I I enjoyed taking pictures, but it wasn't until my first trip west to the Rockies when it was like, okay, I want to do more of this more often all the time. And it was really inspired by the landscape that I was seeing, and
Yeah,
specifically the Canadian landscape that kind of forced me into it.
yeah, yeah. Living in around the Rockies, you couldn't help but
Yeah.
do some sort of photography.
Yeah.
So, when did it start to become art as opposed to recording? You know, a lot of people start out and they start out, as you said, you were recording your trips and creating memories and so forth. And I'm not saying that the artistic side isn't also creating memories, but there's a difference between taking a photo of something versus saying something with your photography.
I think it would have been that trip to the Rockies where I had taken photos I had gotten my very first digital camera. It was a state-of-the-art 2 megapixel point and shoot.
Yep, yep,
And we bought it specifically for that trip.
yeah,
And I took all of the photos. And that following year in high school, I took a photography class
cool.
because at my school you could take science or art. And I
Yep.
had 1 day of chemistry, and that was it. I canceled that class.
Good
I
on
went to
you.
photography. And in that class, we would have assignments, and it would be like bring in a photo that represents the rule of thirds and all these kind of things that you're learning.
Yeah.
And unknowingly, I had taken all of these photos that technically followed some of these rules on my trip the previous summer. And so I had all these photos available for these assignments. And it's, oh, I guess this is something I'm good at, where my natural eye was seeing this stuff, and I took the shot because I liked that scene that I saw on that screen.
Sure, sure.
And it from that kind of, what's the words I want to say? It's that validation of, oh, this is good, gave me the confidence to keep going. And I would take the pictures as journalism, photojournalism of the trips,
Mhm.
but it was more like, oh, this is pretty, I'm gonna take a picture of this. Oh, this is pretty, I'll take a picture of this. Not more of the, oh, this is a picture of the sign for this place kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was almost always just, oh, this is pretty, I'm gonna take a picture of it.
And so I'd like to delve into that educational side of things and how that sort of has impacted on your photography now. And obviously, things like the rule of thirds,
Yeah.
it's a rule, it's a guideline, and you know,
Yeah.
there's all sorts of compositional rules which go
Yeah.
along with making what some people call a good photograph. How much do you keep from what that education, that early education in high school and so forth? How did that sort of impact, and how has that sort of changed along the journey?
I don't remember anything else from the class, so that also
Okay,
helped.
that's nice.
It went in the head and went right out because it wasn't important. I was just taking the shots that I liked, and the school stuff was, it's all it leaves the head almost immediately. But the memories that I do have are spending time in the dark room because it was
Yeah.
all we were doing film in school. And so I remember the experimenting with that. And yeah, there's so much now that I've learned about photography and composition and just trial and error that it has taken the space of all the stuff that I apparently had learned in school.
Yeah, that darkroom experience in school really resonates with me too. It was one of the
Yes.
things that really got me hooked, was putting a blank piece of paper into a bath and an image
Yeah.
and going, wow.
Yeah, it was so much fun. Like, just what I ended up doing is I had spent too much time in the dark room because we were able to spend as much time in there as we wanted.
Nice.
And my time in there would be longer than the class was. And so I'd come out of the class or out of the dark room, and the rest of the class had already gone to their next class.
Yeah.
And I was late, and my photography teacher already had her next class in there. And so instead of me filling or having to stop her class to get a note to give to my next teacher to say that I was late, she just printed off a photocopied stack of paper for me to take off of her desk that was like, sorry, Danny's late for her class. She was in the dark room too long.
The Danny note.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I
So,
really loved it in there.
so what is photography to you now? What is it that keeps you going, and what is it that makes you feel like a photographer? What is it that makes you call yourself a photographer?
Yeah. Well, I think with the darkroom stuff, everything felt a bit more hands-on.
Hmm.
I'd take the picture, but then I'd have kind of the fun in the processing of the print that came from it. And I've done some kind of internal thinking because now I really hate spending time behind the computer editing photos. It is
Wow.
the worst part for me.
Yeah.
I If I can batch edit a year's worth of stuff in a day, we're good. I never have to be behind the computer for editing photos ever again then. And I find that I am more creative behind the camera. I still use in filters in the field. I know I can do it technically in post,
Yep. Yep.
but I can do it way more efficiently in the field,
Yep.
and I don't mind freezing my fingers off, taking the filters on and off, and I enjoy the hands-on experience of it. I don't enjoy the computer part of
Okay.
photography. And feel like it's weird because it was a switch where the darkroom got me obsessed with the photography part, and now I don't want to do any of the processing.
Personally, I'm half. I'm just as
Yeah.
much happy behind the computer doing
Yeah.
edit
Yeah.
and digging through the archive trying to find those nuggets that you forgot about 5 years
Yeah.
ago, and going, right, what can I do? And the experimentation.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that I really enjoy, is being able to just grab something and go, okay, wasn't great, and I'm never going to post it on social media necessarily unless I can make it
Yeah.
polish that thing into something worth looking at. But I guess I just find it interesting. A number of people I've spoken to on the podcast have expressed the same sort of dislike of editing. And
Yeah.
given your darkroom background, that it seems anathema to me that
Yeah.
don't like it as much as they enjoy the time in the field. That said, I love the time in the field too, equally.
Yeah, and it was weird when I was really trying to think deeply about it. I'm
Mm.
like, why did I really enjoy the processing part of photography originally and not now? And I've come to the conclusion that it is the hands-on experience where I'm able to touch it and do it instead of using the mouse
Oh.
and moving it around and just doing the sliders. Like, it doesn't feel like maybe if I get a touchscreen computer, that might help. Because maybe, I don't know, but it
So do you
feels
use a
less
tablet
hands-on.
or just a mouse?
And just the mouse.
Yeah. I've
Yeah.
found since shifting to a tablet, that feels
Mhm.
more hands-on. I use a combination, and to be honest, in some edits, it's typing numbers because I know the
Yeah.
numbers that I want to tweak stuff to, rather than
Yeah.
I don't use the sliders as much as I used to. But in terms
Yeah.
of brushing in, dodge burn, that sort of thing, that to me, using a tablet actually has a nice feel to it.
Nice. Yeah, I
Yeah,
might give that a try.
yeah,
Yeah, I find I'm even not super fussed if anyone sees the photos either. It's I'm increasingly I find I almost feel like I have too many photos already. So there's always something else that I'm taking. So I don't really need to add to it.
yeah,
And so it's very much becoming more and more about my experience when I'm taking the photo. That's what I enjoy most.
yeah.
And I feel like I'm getting more and more stubborn as I get older, where I only want to do what I want.
Yep, yep.
And I find as many ways to only do what I want.
Nice. I really resonate with that. That's something that I think as you get older, you do tend to slip into that and going,
Yeah.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So obviously, where you live has influenced what you take.
Mm.
Has it influenced how you take your images?
Possibly. I
Okay.
think there's a lot of, I think with my images, I find I do a lot of stronger foregrounds because we do have a lot of foreground options.
Yeah.
In the winter, there's a lot of frost and ice. There's a lot of flowers. There's a lot of details on the ground
Mm.
that can help support that amazing background.
Yeah.
And then equally, there's a lot of longer lens landscapes, which I really love, where
Yeah.
I'm using my ultra telephotos that I would really be using for wildlife that I don't really use for wildlife anymore.
Right.
And I'm using them to capture these longer lens compressed images where I'm filling the frame with this little spot of this grand landscape
Mm.
that is really special.
Yeah. Okay. And in doing that, that's something that I've not just experimented with. I'm building that into my workflow, is looking for those long lens focused on more intimate details of a grander landscape. And I guess it's definitely a style of work that is comes out a lot in your work. I'm interested in how you stay inspired with that. Is it just looking for those details, or are you a little bit more organic with it and it's just, oh, there's the light, I'm going to go there?
Pretty much. Yeah. I chase the light wherever the light's hitting. Goes there space? Is there
Yep,
a line of light that's hitting the different layers of the ridge on the mountain? Do we
sure.
have light in the front and shadow in the back, or opposite? Or can we deal with, is the light creating lines within that small little space? Do I have enough focal length?
Yeah,
Now I have a 600 millimeters, so there's really not much that I can't get now
yep,
without, because before I had a 400 and I'd have to crop it,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
didn't really want to crop because I don't want to do any editing. So now that I have a 600, I can really pull in and get everything that I want.
Nice, nice. And how do you stay inspired? What is it that makes you,
Just
what
go
is
for
it?
a drive. Just go for the drive. There's endless. The way that the light hits a mountain a specific way, that one time that I was driving, I have to stop and grab that shot because who knows when it's going to happen again, because everything is so fleeting.
Yeah,
And it's very easy to stay inspired here. And I know that I'm spoiled.
definitely.
Yeah.
I guess saying what you've just said says to me that you probably don't plan a lot of your shoots. Is that true? You just go out and pick a direction to drive and off you go?
Yeah, pretty much. I feel like I'm a bit allergic to planning.
Okay.
Uh, I'm almost stubborn. I'm pretty stubborn, but I almost prefer to not. And even if I should, I don't want expectations. I like surprises. Like even movies, I don't want to watch the preview. I want the surprise. If I know who's in it, I know I'm going to want to watch it, kind of
Yeah.
thing. So it's like that. I know that the mountain's pretty. I know I'm going to want to see it. I'm just going to go take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even with like Milky Way, Northern Lights, if I know which direction of the sky that they're in, I know this place well enough that I can, oh, it's going to be clear skies. I don't have a shot of the Milky Way in this general location. Let's drive the 4 hours to get there
Yeah.
if I want to. So it's, I like to live on that whim. I like to live between the plans and be able to really just shoot anything and everything and with no expectations and just let it happen.
Nice, nice. What about longer term? Do you have goals in your photography that you set yourself, and do you have a process for setting those goals?
I just photo projects really where I want to get photos of as many lakes with their what I like to call their winter jacket. So the
Yeah.
first snow, where
Yep.
there's snow on the trees and an open lake. I want to get as many of those as possible, but no real long-term kind of lofty goals of things. Just take pictures.
Do you do a lot of experimentation in your work?
Yeah. I used to long exposures
Yep.
and sticking true to me, I would never time them. I would
Okay.
just it's like, oh, that seems like enough time, and I'd try it. I'd let go of the shutter. So I've gotten to know some approximates,
Yeah.
and I know that if it's sunrise and the sun's not up yet, and if I use my six stop, I'm going for quite a few minutes.
Yeah.
If it's in the middle of the day, I can get away with that. Maybe I can stack my 6 and my 10 stop and do a almost a 20-minute, or it's 14-ish minutes
Yeah.
sometimes depending on the light.
Wow.
But I like to guess that. Often what I end up doing is if I'm revisiting locations with clients and technically I've already shot something similar, I will throw on a long exposure just to get something different as the experiment. And I will almost always put my 10 stop on because it's my set it and forget it a lot of times. And I
Mhm.
do often forget about it and I get distracted and it's like, oh shoot, I'm shooting. And then I go back and it's usually enough time that I have a good shot that I've forgotten that I've taken. So there's a lot of happy accidents and a lot of that, which is surprising. And I didn't know the ending. It was wonderful.
So what about the failures? Experimentation, and by its nature, comes with
Yeah.
that expectation of failure. How do you deal with the ones that don't work? Because you've spent 10 minutes or 14 minutes.
Yeah. I just know that for next time. There's a lot of dark or too bright photos that I've only wasted time and memory, and
Yeah.
uh, I got a few of those.
That's the
So
nice thing about digital art. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So one of the things a lot of people talk about, and as I said, the difference between an artistic photographer and a documentary photographer is I'm not taking a photo of a thing, I'm trying to say something with my photography. What are you trying to say with yours?
that I haven't fully figured out yet. I think I like to document the landscape that I'm seeing,
Mhm.
but I also don't want it to be just a document of what I've seen. I
Sure.
want to capture those fleeting moments, as the light's changing, the different times of year, those special things that only happen every couple of years or something. I choose to chase those moments as much as possible, but yeah, I've I need to think more on that because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could probably figure it out, but I don't have a full answer for that yet.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. It's taken me a long time to get to a point where I go, I know what I want to say. And I don't think everybody does. Some people do right off the bat because they have this mindset about, okay, I have a concept and that's what I want to talk about. But yeah, I think I think a lot of photographers struggle with that question and understanding what it is that they are trying to say.
Yeah.
That said, I guess the communication medium, which is photography, that visual communications medium, means that you need to not necessarily, every image doesn't necessarily have to say something, but I really like finding the stories that live in that, whether it's a shaft of light or a a wave coming towards you or going past you or whatever. And
Yeah.
those little moments that just make up a tiny fraction of a story, even, that makes the
Yeah.
viewer go, okay, what is the story here? That
Yeah.
fascinates me just as much.
And the viewer can also connect to it differently than how I
Absolutely.
wanted. I've had a photo where I took it because the light was changing and I had to slam on the brakes, throw myself down the hill, take the photo because it was only happening for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And I got the shot, but I got it because it was a challenge to get it. It was a beautiful shot, a beautiful location. The fog was in and out, and it was
Mhm.
an opening in the fog, and the pink light was seen on the clouds behind the fog that I got. But then people who have seen it, they are seeing different things in it. There was a rock in the shot that looks like something,
Yeah.
and people were connecting to it differently. I'm like, it was pretty, and I took it.
What does success in your photography look like to you?
Being happy for me is success with the photography. If I'm happy with the image, it's great if other people like it too. It's great if other people connect to it.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit more of a personal thing for me that I really love taking the photo and spending time taking the photos, and the enjoyment from other people is that extra bonus on top of that.
Yeah. Nice. And in terms of the choice of lifestyle, is it full time for you now, photography? How
Yep,
did you,
2018 I went full time.
yeah. So how did you make that decision? And were there strains and stresses in your mind going, okay, when do I pull the trigger? It's something that really interests me, is how people get to the point where they go, okay, I'm done with
Yeah.
9 to 5 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm doing this.
In 2011 is when I moved west, and that this running photography workshops was my main goal
Sure.
of stuff then. So 2011, I spent as much time as possible exploring the area, learning the locations, learning when locations were best, and trying to understand weather, which is always changing.
Yeah.
And so then it was about a year and a half after I moved that I started the business, started to do a little bit of workshops every year while still working quote unquote real jobs, all in tourism, whether it was hotels, visitor center, Parks Canada, and just the business grew gradually. And in 2018 is when I had been working for Parks Canada for a few years before that.
Yeah.
And because it's government, I was able to take a year off
Nice.
without giving up my job and kind of have that safety net.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so 2018 is that safety net year. I decided to see if things were viable that year, and it was a really busy year.
Yeah.
So I technically have retired from Parks Canada and was able to go full time because it
Awesome.
was getting to a point where I was working. I was doing 2.5 hour sunrises before work. I'd work my 8.5, 9 hours, and I'd do a 2.5 hour sunset after work, and then I'd sleep in between. So it was getting to a point where I needed to pick one.
Yeah. 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 And what have you learnt from running your own business
It's
now?
horrible and hard.
Yeah, 4 years.
It's hard. It's hard, especially now after the whole world has changed.
Yeah.
But things are coming back, and I'm optimistic.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
How do you balance wearing all of the hats? Because you're the CEO, you're the chief
Yeah.
marketing officer, you're the chief financial officer, you're the chief
Yeah.
photographer, you're the chief editor, all of those jobs. I
Yeah.
know doing it myself, it's okay, which hat am I wearing and how much time are you spending in each of those modes?
Yeah. I don't do a good job at any of them, but they get done
I think that's the problem, is that
Yeah.
you're having to split yourself between a lot of different roles.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah,
some roles that you're just not good at all.
yeah.
So it's a fun process.
What's your favorite one other than the photographer, obviously?
Mm, none. None of them. All of them are not my specialty. I'm not good at any of them. I struggle with all of it other than the being out teaching people how to take pictures. Yeah.
That's the bit you do for love. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to do the rest for money, though. That's the problem.
Yes.
So tell us about how you got started in doing workshops then. I'm interested in how you then started to structure the business a bit, because one of the things I like to do here is analyze how people run their businesses a little bit, so that some of that info can get passed on to people that are thinking about doing the same thing.
I started off small. It was all trying to advertise online,
Sure.
and it was nice that it was gradual. It wasn't all at once. I was able to do some trial and error of different website designs, different web host providers, and figure out what worked and what didn't work. And then just generally how I wanted to structure my workshops. I feel like it's a bit different than maybe some other people do, because pretty much all of my business is private one-on-ones.
Okay.
So it's a bit more what you would maybe say labor intensive, because I'm working a lot of hours and focusing on individual people instead of doing 1 or 2 weeks a month with a group workshop in a different location. But so I'm doing a lot, which I enjoy because I'm out there a lot, which is the best part of
Yeah.
it. And so I have options where I've grown into now, where I have a 5 hour half day options of sunrise or sunset,
Yep.
and then full day, and then multi-day, where I we you pick the days, the amount of days, and then I pretty much figure out where we're going to go. I have, for the 5 hours, it's a bit more focused, where people will pick the Banff area or the Lake
Yeah.
Louise and Yoho area and that kind of stuff. And then they pick the general area, and then I pick the specifics, because I now I know where we should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if people have an idea of a place that they want to go to,
Mhm.
especially for the multi days,
Yeah.
if they're like, oh, I want to make sure that we hit Bow Lake, I'm like, okay, or we'll hit Bow Lake, but I'm going to make sure we get there on the day where it's going to be the best. And so I like that freedom too, where the multi days, it's basically just going out and having a fun week.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
What's the most important thing for somebody that wants to run workshops to remember when running or hosting a workshop?
The flexibility
Yeah.
with people and places is not to be overlooked,
Mm.
because I have a variety of different kinds of people who come through, and there's a variety of fitness levels, there's a variety of just general camera knowledge and photography knowledge,
Yep.
and being able to adapt is probably my most important quality
Yeah.
as a photography teacher, because I have people who have all different cameras. I shoot Canon,
Yep.
but I get some Canons, but most of the time it's a split between, probably an even split between Canon, Nikon, and Sony, with a
Yep.
few Olympus and Fuji and all those. And then if there's something wrong with their camera that they can't get to work, I should be able to help them fix it.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly learning the new technology. I enjoy
Mm.
learning that new technology. And especially if there's a camera that I haven't seen before, I always ask, like, can I hold it? Can I just look through the menus a little bit and see what they're
Particularly if
thinking?
they've got a Hasselblad.
Yes, yeah. Can I see?
Uh,
Yeah.
in terms of running them, the thing I'm always impressed by is what I can learn from my clients. Do you ever find yourself doing that?
Yeah, definitely. I know what my strengths are, and I enjoy watching clients who have a certain eye for specific things.
Mm.
So if I know someone who is know that they're really good or really enjoy macro, I'm going
Yep.
to make sure that we're going to a place where there's going to be a lot of options for macro or abstracts, where maybe if I know that there's an area where there's a photo in this spot, I can't see it, but
Yep.
someone who has the eye for this can see it.
Yeah.
And so I like to be able to create the opportunity
Mm.
for that. So I enjoy watching when that happens. I'm like, oh, I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's really good. And I make sure that I'm letting them know that they've figured this spot out that I've not seen.
Yeah.
I've not
Yeah.
been able to figure it out, and they've done such a wonderful job.
Yeah.
And to keep that eye, like it's wonderful.
Fantastic. Yeah. It always fascinates me. You can have 3 or 4 photographers within 5 meters of one another,
Yeah.
and they all come away with something completely different.
Yes. Yeah. I
Doesn't
love
matter.
it.
Doesn't matter what level they're at either.
Yeah.
It's amazing. How one of the things a lot of people, and I'm talking prints and that sort of thing here, how you price your work is something that a lot of photographers struggle with. How do you deal with that struggle?
I like to look at the prices that everyone else has around me and see how they compare themselves to everyone else and try to find where my place is in that. I don't do a lot of print sales because I'm not a good salesperson. I have them available. I have pricing on there. At one point, I figured out what that pricing should be. I forget how I did that. So the next time I have to do that, I'll probably have to remember how I did that and then figure it out again. But
It's
it's
kind of
usually taking a look at other work.
what I was looking for. Do you have a formula? You do. You can't
No.
remember it. That's beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
What about favorite locations? What is your favorite location? The thing that keeps calling you back?
I have a few. I have a few different spots around here where Vermilion Lakes
Yep.
is close to the town of Banff. It's if I could, I would close the road and live on it. And so that no one else can have it, it's all mine. But I can't. So I'll just keep going back. It's one of my absolute favorite spots. There's so much to shoot. Daytime, nighttime, any time of year. It has so much to offer along all the three and a
Mm.
half lakes that are there. And then Moraine Lake is it's becoming harder to get to nowadays
Yeah.
because of the shuttle access
Yep.
and the change that Parks has done with it because it is such a popular place.
Yeah.
But
Very popular and shots of it.
yeah, and it's really a true example of what social media can do to a
Mm.
location. It is our fault. I take part responsibility, and everyone else who was taking pictures of Moraine and put it on social media. It's all of our faults. And but it's such a beautiful place. I cherish the memories that I've had where I've been the only one on the rock pile taking pictures. I know that that's not really going to happen again unless I'm there in the middle of the night, which is hard to get to at that point now too. But it will forever hold some of my favorite memories, and I'll keep going back. I'll find times when I can actually have the experience, the current experience, be a good experience instead of sunrise, although beautiful, is becoming a little bit a trade-off for the beauty and the experience.
Yep.
The beauty is not as high as the bad experiences that happen with the amount of people
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
noise and that kind of stuff. So there's still times where you can find some peace, and I'm chasing that now. So
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned a really good point, and it's something that's come up quite a bit on the podcast around the way that social media has sort of over popularized, and therefore the foot traffic into some of these what were remote locations, and some still are, some are
Mhm.
it made even harder to get to because of things like the changes that places like national parks and so forth start to make.
Yeah.
I know down in the States they do ticketing to things like the Arches National Park and whatever, and you've got to apply months ahead to be able to get
Yeah.
there. So not great for spontaneous photography.
Yeah.
I guess I'm interested in your opinion on, you touched on a really good point that we photographers posting these things on social media are partly to blame for that. I'm interested though, do you think there are solutions for that? And if so, do you have any suggestions?
I think with the spread of wealth throughout the world, there is more people who are able to travel, where in the past there hasn't been. And so because of that, there are more people who are able to travel, so their places are going to get more and more populated.
Mm,
So as photographers who are photographing locations, it's I find it's important to, if you are in a finding a new spot, that you are being mindful about whether or not that place can support
yeah.
the amount of followers that you have. So if you have, I have 30 something thousand, like
Mm,
the places that I go to, not all of them can support if everyone who's following me on Instagram can
yeah.
go there. I'm sometimes I don't post the location, I don't post the general, even the general area that it's in, maybe just the province that it's in.
Yeah.
So it's we have to be responsible for something. You have
Yeah.
to be responsible for your actions and what you've passed on. Not everyone has the knowledge
No.
of to not step on things
Or
that
the care
they
factor.
die when you step on them.
There
Yeah.
are people that just don't care, and they'll leave their pile of trash there, you know.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is a lot of people just don't know.
Mm,
They've maybe like they've grown up differently, they have different experiences. They'll eventually learn it, but they may not learn it in time.
yeah.
So there's you have to I want to feel that a lot of people are not horrible people and not maliciously leaving things.
Sure.
And a lot of times I see people who will take their phone out to take a picture and they've dropped their Kleenex or they've dropped wrappers from the thing that they were trying to take their wrapper with them, but they've dropped it because they've taken a picture and no one saw it and told them to pick it up.
Yeah.
A lot of that happens a lot. It's windy. It takes things away.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I see it. If you see it, pick it up. If there's
Yeah.
trash,
Yeah.
I do shake my fist at the people who hide the diapers in
Ah,
places that's the worst part.
yeah. Yeah.
Wrappers I can get, hiding diapers in bushes, or that didn't blow away.
Not likely to either.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something a little happier. What's your
Yeah.
most memorable experience?
I have quite a few. I've got lots of fun stories. The photo that I actually have behind me, I almost froze to death, I feel like,
Mhm.
when we went up to take that shot, because we had hiked up early before sunrise to capture it. And we left with a lot of extra time just in case we were slow on the trail. It ended up that we had quite a bit of time to sit and wait. And I got a little sweaty on the hike up and got a bit too cold with the extra wind that showed up
Mhm.
before the sunrise, and I had to use my friend's the emergency rescue blanket thing
Yeah, yeah.
to
Yep.
stay warm. So that was one of the not so good ones.
I sometimes ask about the horror stories, so that sounds like
Yeah. We've had bears come through randomly.
yeah.
There's been all of a sudden the rain shows up, but it's not raining on us, it's raining in front of us, and then a rainbow shows up. And there's a lot of times where just rainbows show up, which are probably my favorite.
Yeah,
Surprise rainbows.
I love it when a rainbow just appears, just
Yeah.
as you're getting the camera out of the bag, and you go,
Yeah.
"Oh, thank you.
Yep.
I'll take that."
Yes.
What's one thing that you've learnt about the world through photography?
That we're all super similar.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah. We all enjoy nature at a different amount, but we all similarly enjoy it
mm,
and like to see pictures of it, to see it. Yeah, we're all
yeah.
pretty similar.
I want to go wind back a little bit to where you were talking about your processing, and I guess dive into your processing technique. If you don't
Yeah.
like it, what is it that you're actually doing?
I do most of my edits in Lightroom. I look through my shots and I see which ones I like best. I usually will rate them with the stars.
Yep.
And then a lot of times I'll get that photo and I'll do my little sliders and it takes what 4 or 5 seconds. I do the adjust the basics and then remove the chromatic aberration and all that little
Perfect.
stuff at the end. And then I export it to Photoshop where I put my stamp on it and resize and sharpen for web, save it, save the original file, and then save the web file. I'm out.
And are
Yeah.
you straight home, straight onto the computer, straight into editing, or do you just back it up and then just leave it for a bit and come back to it?
It's a mixture. So if I have a lot of workshops that are back to back, it stays on the card until I'm able to have the time to sit down and put it onto the
Sure.
computer. So there is a little bit of leaving things to chance that hopefully my card doesn't mess up in between there. But I put it on a lot of times if I have that time to put the photos on the computer, a lot of times I do also have time to go through some of the shots, especially if I'm coming back from a multi-day backpacking trip or something
Yeah.
and I'm able to go through some of my favorites. I do that kind of first look through and pick the big favorites. And then I edit those and then I forget about it for a couple years usually. And then I
Yep.
go back and then I pick some of the other ones out. And it's usually that kind of a few times a year where I feel like I want to edit and
Yeah.
I'll edit maybe 50 photos. And
Wow.
I've picking a year usually and I'll go through the dates each month
Yep.
and find some photos in that and like, oh, how did that one? I don't how did I miss that one? And go from there and edit that. And a lot of times I'll do my Lightroom edit and then I export to Photoshop and then I go back to Lightroom and I find a new one. And then I have those 50 photos in Photoshop that I can just batch that out real fast too.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Do you prefer taking pictures on your own or with other people?
I've been taking pictures now. I used to do a lot more on my own, but now because I'm shooting mostly with clients, that I find when I'm on my own, I lack direction.
Okay. Wow.
I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing right now. And so even just to have someone there to chat to, even if
Mm,
they're not taking pictures, just to have someone around to just chat around to. So
yeah.
I I find that I enjoy it more a little bit more now when I'm with people.
Hmm. Do
Yeah.
you ever bump into anyone that you know out in the field?
Yeah, a lot of times I end up finding people that like, oh, I didn't know that you were in the town or in the Rockies. We're
Excellent.
coming up to this fall is usually when I end up running into people because a lot of people come here to shoot the fall colors. So
Yeah, no
I
doubt.
usually end up bumping into a few people. Yeah.
Yeah. What about printing? Do you print much of your work, or is it all pretty much all digital?
It's mostly digital. I do print. I have to do some refresh. I have printed quite a few of my own shots for my walls at home. but it's probably been 5 years since. So I should probably refresh and change those up with some newer shots.
Yeah, yeah. I do a fair few test prints just to see what they look like. I've
Yeah.
only got an A4 printer here. It's not going to cut it for something that's going to go on the walls per se, but yeah,
Yeah. I
I
have a photo printer that I had gotten years ago, but I always struggled to get the colors to match. And I found that like I could spend more time and learn to do this,
yeah.
but it's I didn't really feel like it. It's like this is not. I don't worry about it.
Printing's
I'll let the
definitely not for
professionals take
everyone.
care of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely not for everyone. There's
Yeah.
a lot of arcane things that you can get into. Once you can get a profile set up that kind of matches your calibrated screen and so forth, it's not so
Yeah.
bad. But I think
Yeah.
that's the first step a lot of people don't understand is having a calibrated screen really makes a difference
Yeah.
to what your printed work ends up looking like. Because if you're
Yeah.
working uncalibrated, then doesn't matter what you do with your profiles, you're going to have to do a lot of jiggery pokery to make it look like it looks on.
Yeah. And there's professionals that are way better at it than I am, so they can handle
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't call myself a professional in terms of printing. I do test prints just to see, okay,
Yeah.
do I need to lighten these shadows or to darken down some of those highlights a little and just get the dynamic range right for the print. But
Yeah. True.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the colors pretty right, then yeah, then I send it off to somebody pro that can actually make it big enough and ugly enough to stick on a wall.
Perfect.
What about things like creative blocks and those times when you're just not feeling it? How do you deal with those?
I was getting into a bit more of a rut, I think, at the end of 2019. But I think with the change of 2020, where kind of everything changed, that I was able to almost be able to take that break and not because things were closed. So I really couldn't go out and shoot very often, anyways.
Yeah, yeah,
So I was able to have that time to just chill. So I find I don't hit the creative blocks too much. I just change a lens and I because I was shooting a lot of ultra wides for a long time. And then I've been shooting now a lot more longer lens landscape stuff. And I feel in the last couple years I've been pretty equal now with the ultra wide and the long lens, and so there's now a balance where I was maybe getting sick of my ultra wide, so I started to do my long lens and just following the creativity and see where that takes you. And if it doesn't take you anywhere, then I'll take a picture with my phone.
fair enough. What do you think photography's place in society is?
It's becoming more and more important, it seems, because there's just so many we're becoming more and more visual. And I feel that photography is going to be a bit more important, maybe, because you have the ability to make things that are not real, that the photography that is quote unquote real, like it is something that is could have been touched with your hands. It is important.
Yeah, okay. And what do
And
you think?
having because
Go on.
as the photographer, you're pointing your camera at something that you want to capture. You want to save that memory, or
Mm.
you want that piece of landscape or wildlife or something to be saved. And it's the past. And I always enjoy looking at pictures of the past, see how
Yeah,
things have changed as time has gone by.
yeah. I find that endlessly fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, particularly places that you know, and you
Yeah.
can go, oh, okay, that building's still there, or that building's gone, and look
Yeah.
what Look what used to be there.
And those trees have grown.
Yeah,
That's
those
my
trees are
favorite.
grown as
Yeah.
another great one. Yeah. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing photography right now?
I don't want to say AI because
Sure.
it's not photography, so it's something different.
Yep.
So it's not really impacting.
It's
Some
another
people might,
art form, for
yeah,
want of a better word.
yeah, and everyone has their own inspirations, really. Some
Yeah.
people are inspired by being behind the computer for the whole thing. Some people are 50-50. Some people are 10, maybe less than 10%. And I think probably the biggest challenge is people who are wanting to create just because, like, doing it for the gram kind of thing. Oh,
Yeah.
I take this picture because it'll do well on social media. Taking this
Yeah.
picture because it would do something for this or whatever would sell better. I find that I don't do a lot of commercial photography. I don't shoot for other people because it takes away my creativity. I've
Mm.
even if I've wanted to maybe do photos for someone commercially and actually had ideas and approached them to do the photos, as
Mm.
soon as it's been like accepted, yes, you could take the pictures, it's all gone. I've forgotten everything. I'm uninspired, none of it.
Really?
So I know now with myself, I have to shoot for myself. I have to shoot what I want. And so the only way that it would work is if I can shoot it and then give you images. And if you're good with that, we're good.
Wow.
So it's,
I
yeah,
don't
it's
know too many
shooting.
clients who'd be up for that.
No. So I find if you're not able, like you maybe you find you end up in creative ruts and those kinds of things when you're maybe not shooting as much for you.
Yeah.
I feel like more photographers should shoot for you.
Yeah. No. Fantastic. What about the future of photography? Where do you think we're going?
Space. I think we're just gonna keep trucking along and people will get better gear, the images will get bigger and better quality, and then there'll be a handful of people who will want to shoot film and shoot all of this older things, and there's going to be these ebbs and flows of art, and I think it'll be interesting to see.
Okay, cool. What's your favorite thing about being a photographer?
Freedom. I shoot what I want when I want for the most part, and it's I've discovered that it's very hard to now that I've worked for myself for so long, it's very hard to work for someone else. I don't take direction very well
Okay,
anymore.
I can understand that. So
Yeah,
what's your least favorite thing about being a photographer?
the business part of photography is the worst part of photography.
I somehow knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. At least I'm consistent.
Very true.
Yeah.
What about the best and or worst piece of advice anyone's ever given you?
The worst piece of advice was probably you have to shoot a manual.
Okay.
And I feel that a lot of people are told that they have to shoot a manual, and you don't have to shoot a manual.
No, definitely.
I only shoot manual if I'm shooting at night, and everything else is with aperture priority.
Hmm.
And my brain works really well with shooting that way.
Yeah.
And I find that there is other people who also shoot that way, and
Yeah.
that's how they're like, they can, if they need to,
Yep.
shoot full manual, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
And I think that can be a lot of roadblocks for people who are learning. And I find that the people who I've seen struggle that didn't need to struggle were usually given that advice that you had to shoot manual,
Mm.
and we don't shoot manual.
Yeah.
We don't need
I,
to.
I find myself switching between probably about three or four modes. Plus,
Yeah.
I've I shoot Canon too, so I've got the C1 and C2 custom
Yeah.
setups, and they're obviously the ones that I go to most often. And one of
Yeah.
those I think is an aperture priority setup, but Yeah, I find I find it really weird if somebody gave advice saying only shoot manual. It's a good way of learning the exposure triangle, but
But you
beyond
can
that,
also, I will
yeah,
still argue that you can still learn that in
absolutely,
aperture,
yeah,
because when you are adjusting, oh, I'm going to change my exposure compensation to go down while you're still staying in maybe f16 and you've gone down one full stop. So
yeah,
you can see that shutter speed change,
exactly,
and you can
yeah,
see the light change also on your live view, and how that it's an instant reaction seeing the number and the light change all at the same time. And
mm,
then I also like with the, because I will shoot a lot of times my focus box with Canon, the focus is your metering box as well. And
yeah,
so
that's right.
I'm I like to move that box around within my scene
Same,
and
yeah,
seeing how it changes and what light I want. So I'm not even looking really at the number. I'm looking at my screen and seeing
yeah,
what that
because
light is,
it
and
gives you
then doing
a
my fine
reflection of
adjustments.
what that exposure would be. Yeah. Do you do
Yeah.
much bracketing?
Not
Probably
really.
the technical stuff.
Yeah, not really. I will sometimes if it's a bit more difficult light, or if I'm traveling to a
Yeah.
location where I'm like, I don't really have, I want to make sure I have something that if I needed to in post, I could bracket, like use those bracketed shots and get something else if I needed to. Most of the times I don't. And so if that histogram is looking a little bit wonky that I might need it, then I do.
Yeah. What about focus stacking? That's not,
Sometimes.
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
it
find,
depends on the scene and how far you are from the foreground and
yeah.
so forth. But
Yeah, for night photography, not night, winter photography, where I'm really wanting to get close to some ice or frost
yeah,
and really have that, it may be small in the scene, but I want it to have a larger impact.
uh,
That's when my lens won't be able to capture that without focus stacking, so I will
yeah,
focus stack.
sure. Yeah, as I say, just interested. Well, we're on the
Yeah.
topic. What about you've talked about the worst piece of advice, but what's the best piece of advice anyone's given you?
The best piece of advice, and the advice that I always like to give, is just keep shooting. Take as many photos as you want, or as possible. Take it at different times of day, different locations. Just keep taking photos,
Mm,
and you will, the trial and error I find really helps problem solving. So if you are in indoors
yeah,
and you know that you're trying to take a picture of the kid and it's moving around, and you've figured out that you have to put your F number down to a lower number, and you have to have your ISO go up real high, and oh, we're in low light situations.
yeah, yeah,
We've troubleshooted that indoors. Let's do that outside.
yeah. Yeah, I think one of the best pieces of advice I've ever got is don't be afraid of high ISO.
Yes, yes, that's also my favorite. I really like my 5D3. I
Mm,
was taking photos, what, in 20, that was came out in 2012. So
uh,
2012, 13, 14, I was taking night photos at 12,800.
yeah,
That's an ancient camera for that ISO.
yeah,
And so modern cameras, don't worry about ISO, is nothing to be scared of.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you for that. Are there any photographers that you think I need to be talking to on the podcast?
all of them. But specifically,
I'm trying.
Um, yeah. I think you've already had Victoria on, I think.
Yes, I have. Yes.
Yeah. She's always my first person that I love to recommend, because she's a
She was
treasure.
brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. She thinks a lot more about her photos than I do. I just take them. She does a really good job. Who else? I always pronounce her name wrong, but it's Kali April. She's in Canmore as well. She does landscape photography, and she does all different types of photography actually, and she's wonderful.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Well, thank you for that. I've got one more question for you, and it's something I've been trying to get to the bottom of right from
Yeah.
the beginning of this podcast.
Okay. We'll figure it out.
Do you like pineapple on pizza?
I love it. Absolutely love it.
Well done.
I do believe it was invented by a person. I think he came from another country, but I believe it was invented in Canada.
Wow. Okay.
So it is our fault, and we'll gladly take it because I absolutely love it.
That's a big call. I get called Hawaiian over here, so
Yeah.
I have no idea where it's come from. I haven't dug into the origins of pineapple on pizza, but
Yeah, I think it was like a guy from Greece that came to Canada, and I believe, if I remember correctly, he invented it here because the Hawaiian pizza had nothing to do with Hawaii. It was just that it had pineapple. But it's the ham. I love ham, and I love pineapple, and it's perfect.
awesome. I'm gonna have to go digging then.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been really amazing getting to know you a little bit better, Dani. Where can people find your work?
They can find me on Instagram. Dani Banff is my screen name on that. Photography by Dani on Facebook, and DaniLefrancois.com.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Dani.
Thanks.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com, along with prints, photography gear, and I'm selling my calendar right now. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.